A false sense of peace. Emma's life, at first glance, mirrored every American dream she dared to wish for. She had carved out her own haven in the quiet suburbs of Seattle, where trees arched over sleepy streets and neighbors smiled in the pale morning sun. Her craftsman-style home, with its bright front porch and the faint scent of pine woods lingering in the air, was a symbol of all she'd built: stability, warmth, and love. Her days followed a comforting rhythm. Early morning jogs around the leafy neighborhood, coffee brewed fresh while she thumbed through emails under the golden light filtering in from the kitchen window. Jason, her boyfriend of nearly 8 years, often joined her for breakfast, sharing playful banter and inside jokes that spoke of a deep, lived-in intimacy. They had grown together from college sweethearts into responsible adults, supporting each other through career changes, heartbreaks, and small victories. Jason was attentive, quick with a reassuring smile, and had the easy confidence of someone who belonged by her side. Every Sunday, Emma's younger sister Lily would drive over from downtown. Lily was everything Emma admired and protected. A free-spirited artist, boisterous and witty, who still called Emma for advice at all hours. Their bond was not without history, sometimes prickly, but now seemed closer than ever. Sunday afternoons were spent sprawled on the living room rug, sharing stories over takeout. Laughter bouncing off whitewashed walls filled with family photos. Their circle of friends called their trio inseparable. Dinners, game nights, summer barbecues. Emma cherished every moment, quietly believing that she, Jason, and Lily had built something unbreakable, a little world of their own, sheltered from the messiness of life. To everyone outside, Emma was the picture of fulfillment, thriving in her career in marketing, surrounded by love and support. Yet beneath the surface, there were tiny undercurrents, brushed aside, unacknowledged. Jason seemed distracted at times, glancing at his phone during conversations. Lily's hugs lingered a bit too long, her laughter at Jason's jokes a shade too loud. But Emma, ever the optimist, dismissed these as nothing but the quirks of familiarity. The illusion of peace was comforting, wrapping itself around Emma's routine like a soft blanket. She kept herself busy, throwing herself into work, planning the upcoming summer trip with Jason, and texting Lily memes late into the night. She blissfully ignored the voice inside her that whispered warnings, enjoying what she thought was the reward for years of loyalty, forgiveness, and trust. In this chapter of Emma's life, the world was gentle and predictable, a perfect portrait framed by ordinary joys. The truth, hidden in shadows, waited for its turn to shatter everything. But for now, Emma let herself believe in her happiness, blind to the storm slowly gathering just beyond her safe, suburban horizon. Subtle signs. Emma's tranquil world began to ripple with tiny disturbances, so subtle they were easy to miss, at least at first. It started with the smallest details, changes in atmosphere that felt more like shifts in the weather than warning signs. She held on to her familiar routines, but a faint sense of unease threaded through her days, a whisper of doubt she tried to brush away. One Monday evening, Jason was unusually quiet during dinner. He poked absent-mindedly at his food, eyes drifting to his phone with a distracted urgency he couldn't hide, even when he tried. When Emma asked about his day, his answers were vague, unconcerned, and peppered with oddly timed smiles. She chalked it up to work stress, but the moment lingered in her mind longer than she cared to admit. A few days later, Lily came over while Jason was still at home. Normally, Lily would greet Emma with her signature whirlwind energy, flinging her bag on the couch and launching into animated stories. This time, She seemed flustered, her words stumbling. She and Jason exchanged a long look in the hallway, a glance so brief Emma almost dismissed it. But the awkward silence that followed hung in the air. Throughout the week, bits and pieces of these oddities kept piling up. Jason started staying late at work more often. Lily, who used to excitedly text Emma throughout the day, grew strangely inconsistent. Sometimes replying with cryptic one-word messages. Sometimes falling silent for hours. Emma caught glimpses of their private exchanges. A paused conversation as she walked in, laughter that died instantly upon her arrival, a phone face down on the table. Emma turned these fragments over and over in her mind, searching for logical explanations. She reasoned with herself, cycling through every possible cause: family trouble, work drama, personal worries. Yet each rationalization settled heavily on her chest, unable to dispel the knot of suspicion. She noticed how Lily's artwork, once brimming with color and confidence, became more abstract, the brushstrokes messier, the subjects harder to decipher. Jason's shirts sometimes bore the faint scent of Lily's perfume, a fragrance Emma recognized from late-night sisterly hugs. It was the sort of thing no one else would detect. But Emma's senses, finely tuned by years of companionship, registered the anomaly instantly. At gatherings with friends, Emma became acutely aware of the slight quadrille Jason and Lily danced. They would sit on opposite ends of the room, but seemed attuned to each other's every movement. A shared inside joke here, a knowing glance there. The laughter between them was just a touch too private, a beat behind everyone else's. Determined not to jump to conclusions, Emma began subtly testing their boundaries. She suggested plans with just Lily, only to find her sister frequently busy all of a sudden. She watched Jason's reactions closely whenever Lily's name came up in conversation. Every time the topic veered toward her sister, Jason's demeanor shifted, shoulders tensing, gaze flickering. A telltale nervous swallow Emma had learned to recognize over the years. Emma's anxiety seeped into her dreams, where whispers of betrayal tangled with the memory of her happy home. She woke up in the pre-dawn quiet, heart racing. Each morning, before her feet hit the floor, she promised herself she would not let paranoia take over. Yet, with each passing day, that resolve seemed harder to keep. Rather than confronting Jason or Lily outright, Emma adopted the role of keen observer, watchful, deliberate, and quietly strategic. She started noting details in a private journal: times, places, words, the faint quickening of pulses. She combed through old messages for context, remembering the warmth that once filled her life and wondering if she'd missed something crucial. Under the veneer of everyday life, the dynamics between the three of them began to shift. Emma's questions became more pointed, her smiles more rehearsed. She moved through her routines with a heightened awareness, each encounter with Jason or Lily now tinged with subtext. Still, no accusations passed her lips, and no confrontation erupted. On the surface, everything looked the same. Three inseparable companions basking in the glow of their shared history, living out the suburban dream. Yet, inside Emma, certainty began to grow where doubt had only recently taken root. She knew her world was changing, even if the reason remained just out of reach. But for now, she gathered her evidence, embraced herself for whatever lay ahead, determined to see the truth for herself, no matter how painful it might prove to be. The collapse, the uneasy balance Emma had maintained, finally shattered one gray afternoon, a day that had begun with the same comforting monotony as any other. She poured her coffee, greeted Jason with a half-awake smile, and watched raindrops chase each other down the kitchen window. But beneath her practiced calm, unease festered, a nervous energy that she couldn't quite shake. That morning, Jason left earlier than usual, claiming a last-minute meeting had come up at work. He pecked her on the cheek and promised he'd call. The gesture was routine, but to Emma, it felt strained, as if the air between them was thick with unspoken words. She watched his taillights disappear into the drizzle, wondering for the 100th time if this was just her overactive imagination. In the quiet that followed, Emma busied herself with chores, her mind spinning with fragments and possibilities. She knew she was missing something obvious, a key piece to a puzzle that only seemed to take shape when she looked at it askance. As the hours crept by, her anxiety built into a silent crescendo. It wasn't until Lily called, her voice unusually breathless, that Emma's world began to unravel. "Hey, Em," Lily stammered. "I left my sketchbook at your place. Mind if I swing by and pick it up, say, around 3? The request was harmless on the surface, but something in Lily's forced brightness rattled Emma. Emma agreed, suspicion sharpening her senses. She felt an old ache bloom in her chest, the dread of confirmation. Still, she prepared herself, smiling in the mirror, practicing steadiness she didn't feel. By 2:30, Emma's phone vibrated with a text from Jason. "Stuck with work. Home late. Love you." And yet, as she scrolled through his recent messages, Emma realized there were none from the day before. The absence was loud. At 3, Lily arrived, windswept and casual, her eyes darting as she entered the living room. The sisters chatted, but there was a performative tilt to Lily's cheer, a nervousness masked by too many questions about Emma's day, about Jason's commute. When Lily dashed to the guest bedroom to fetch her sketchbook, Emma followed, pretending to look for a missing sock. As Emma entered, she found the door slightly ajar and overheard the unmistakable ping of Lily's phone. Soft footsteps echoed in the hallway. Then a silence that felt deliberate. A message preview flashed on Lily's lock screen, Jason's name alongside a heart emoji. Lily snatched her phone up, but not before Emma saw enough. The puzzle, after weeks of torment, clicked into place. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She tried to summon denial, to search for an alternative explanation. But deep down, she knew. She had always known. Their encounter was brief. Lily barely met Emma's gaze as she mumbled a hasty goodbye and hurried out the door, the sketchbook clutched tightly to her chest. Emma listened to the car start and drive off, her body frozen in place. Alone in the silent house, Emma let the mask drop. Pain surged through her. A white-hot, searing ache, mingled with humiliation and fury. For several long moments, she just stood there, staring at the empty hallway. Every memory, with Jason and Lily, twisted by the knowledge that everything she believed about her life had been a lie. She paced the length of her living room, her mind replaying every moment. The lingering glances, the private jokes she'd brushed off, the sudden coldness between her and Jason. It all seemed so obvious now. How had she missed it? Betrayal took on a physical form, tightening across her chest, leaving her gasping. But even in her agony, Emma's instincts to protect the fragile remnants of her courage kicked in. She didn't call either of them. She didn't scream or demand answers. Instead, she sat down on the sunlit couch, knees drawn to her chest, and allowed herself to feel the full magnitude of her heartbreak, every ounce of it. Tears came hot and silent. Between sobs, she whispered fragments of All the imagined conversations she'd never get to have. How could you? Why my own sister? What was I missing? Hours slipped by as Emma oscillated between grief and numbness. She thought about calling a friend, reaching out to her mother, but found she couldn't bear the pity, couldn't even name what had broken without choking up. She was locked in a cocoon of shame, anger, and disbelief. The evening air grew heavy with the promise of rain. Outside, the sky deepened to a bruised twilight. Emma slowly wiped her tears, steeling herself. She was not yet ready to confront Jason or Lily. Not while she was so raw, not without a plan. She realized, with a kind of cold clarity, that she would not let her life unravel in public, would not hand them her pain so easily. If they would tear her world apart so carelessly, perhaps she could learn to survive the wreckage and maybe, just maybe, engineer a reckoning of her own. That night, the house seemed different, emptier, echoing with the ghosts of trust. As Emma lay awake in the darkness, her thoughts formed a silent vow, a promise that this betrayal would not be the last word in her story. The silent plan. The house was quieter than ever. A silence so dense, Emma felt it pressing in on her. She barely slept that night, her mind racing between bitter recollections and the haunting possibility of what came next. By dawn, the ache in her chest had numbed to something sharper. A cold resolve, hard as glass. Hurt had drained the color from her world, but it also left room for something new, purpose. For the first time since everything fell apart, Emma stopped replaying the betrayal and started considering her options. She thought of the confrontation scenes that might have unfolded, the shouting, the tears, the rawness of Jason's excuses or Lily's attempts at deflection, but a primal instinct inside her recoiled at the idea. She wasn't ready to give them a front-row seat to her suffering. She refused to offer them the closure of confession. Instead, Emma felt a strange mounting clarity. The best revenge was not a public explosion. It was control. And to keep control, she needed a plan. Emma's calm exterior at breakfast was flawless. Jason, when he finally returned home, acted as if nothing had changed. He told her he'd been up late with work, asked bland questions about her day, even leaned in to brush her cheek, though the touch was strangely hesitant. Emma matched him, smile for smile, all while cataloging every flicker of anxiety behind his eyes. She moved with careful precision, barely letting her mask slip. But behind that sweetness, a new self was forming, one that could outplay both of them. Stage 1. Information. Emma began by admitting a painful truth. She still needed answers. Blind faith was over. She spent her evenings sorting old photos and digital memories. But now she looked for tells. The times Jason and Lily had been just a little too close. Or the moments someone went missing from a group photo, silently erased. She combed through group texts, social media posts, and the casual digital trails their lives had left. Patterns started to surface. Coincidences that, under her new scrutiny, no longer felt random. She even started tracking subtle details in a blank notebook she kept hidden under her mattress. Times Lily's texts came in just as Jason left the room. Receipts for lunches Jason never mentioned. IG stories, where a bit of Jason's jacket sleeve appeared in one of Lily's candid coffee shop selfies, even though he'd sworn he was at the office. Emma wasn't obsessed with catching them anymore. She was building a dossier. Nights were the hardest. When sleep wouldn't come, Emma replayed their voices in her mind, sifting for inconsistencies. She marked every lie, every omission, like a forensic detective cataloging evidence for a future case. Stage 2. Preparation. With hard-won patience, Emma practiced a casual indifference she did not feel. She found herself studying both Lily and Jason with a new, ruthless objectivity. She watched for triggers and soft spots, picking out the weaknesses neither had ever thought to conceal. She noted how Lily's confidence crumbled whenever family came up, how Jason's facade slipped during arguments about trust. Emma rehearsed her conversations and reactions in front of the bathroom mirror, controlling her tone and posture. When Lily called one afternoon, her voice unsteady, Emma answered with gentle distraction, never letting on that she could hear the guilt threaded into every word. She let Lily ramble, volunteered nothing, and waited. Eventually, Lily would slip. Emma didn't stop there. She scrolled back through old memories, searching for ammunition, secrets entrusted to her over the years. She made a private list, then spent hours thinking through how every piece might be used. A time, Lily cheated on an ex and begged Emma for help keeping it quiet. An old workplace rumor about Jason's integrity on a big client project. Each secret was a chess piece, and the board was finally hers. Stage 3. Planting doubt. Emma knew that if she was going to turn the tables, she needed Jason and Lily off balance, doubting one another. A war of confrontation wouldn't work. This had to be a psychological campaign, slow and methodical, invisible at first. So she started with small interventions. A casual remark, cloaked in innocence, about how Jason sometimes seemed preoccupied these days, just loud enough for Lily to overhear. With Jason, she began dropping hints about Lily's new mystery friend she'd seen on social, taking care not to say too much, but just enough to make him wonder. She baited them with carefully chosen anecdotes, stories from her own day that subtly mirrored their own deceptions. Funny how people can be right in front of you, but keeping big parts of themselves secret, she mused one night at dinner, locking eyes with Jason. Ever feel like that? She started staging situations where Jason and Lily would overhear conversations seemingly unrelated to themselves, except for a stray, detail relevant only if you harbored guilt. She even coordinated a game night with mutual friends and engineered seating arrangements so Jason and Lily couldn't sit together, forcing them to interact with others and risk exposure while she observed them like an experiment in progress. Stage 4. Building suspense. Emma's goal was not to destroy them out of rage, but to make them doubt each other, to knock loose the fragile trust that had enabled their betrayal in the first place. Here, restraint was her greatest weapon. Whenever Jason asked about Lily, Emma would raise her eyebrows as if she knew more than she let on, then quickly change the topic. She was careful never to accuse, but to sow the smallest seeds of wonder. For Lily, she became the perfect confidant, listening closely, but never truly responding, holding back facts only she knew. She amplified their own paranoia by being unpredictably available. Some days, she arranged to be home unexpectedly early and watched Jason scramble to hide his phone. Other times, she sent Lily a thoughtful text just before bed, only to see a read receipt linger for hours before Lily replied, scrambling to keep her story straight. Even in group settings, Emma kept up appearances, smiling at just the right moments, always generous, never bitter. But she became a ghost in the background, catching the way Jason stiffened whenever Lily spoke, or the faint flush across Lily's cheeks when Jason entered the room. The tension between them became a silent storm, and Emma rode the winds, shaping their fear. Stage 5. Waiting for the cracks. Days blurred into weeks. Emma let the pressure build, resisting the urge to force a confrontation. She sensed the shift, Jason was increasingly irritable, checking Lily's responses, sometimes snapping in ways that made their friends uncomfortable. Lily, usually carefree, began acting cagey around Emma, eyes darting, mood swinging violently. Emma kept notes, patient as a chess master nearing a checkmate. She knew the seeds she'd planted were taking root, and cracks had started to show. Jason and Lily, once united in secrecy, now found themselves alone with their doubts, haunted by the possibility that their game was up. And through it all, Emma crafted her final moves in silence. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was the orchestrator of a quiet reckoning. Alone in her bed each night, Emma no longer cried. She listened to the rain tapping out patterns against her windows and felt something new flaring inside her. Power. The old Emma had trusted too easily. The new Emma intended to make sure that Jason and Lily never trusted anyone, especially each other, again. A slow smile played on her lips in the darkness. Sometimes, destruction was an art form, and Emma was just getting started. Step by step, breaking them down. Emma moved through the next phase of her plan as if gliding over thin ice, a dancer invisible to the audience, orchestrating every wobble and crack in her adversaries beneath the surface. The persona she wore was mild-mannered and gracious, a woman focused on work and the little joys of daily life. Jason and Lily, both too absorbed in their own nervousness and secrets, failed to recognize the subtle gears shifting behind Emma's gentle gaze. The first maneuver came in the form of whispered confessions, carefully seeded when Lily least expected it. Emma invited her sister over for coffee one Saturday, making it feel like the comfort of old times. Pastries on flowered plates, indie music humming in the background. Halfway through their second cup, Emma offered a story, one that on its surface seemed innocent, even nostalgic. Did Jason ever tell you about the mess with his job back in Boston? Sometimes I wonder if those things still weigh on him. Lily blinked, uncertain, her mouth frozen in a small O, before she managed to laugh it off. Emma didn't press. She merely let the suggestion hang in the air, painting doubt on the canvas of their sisterhood. Hours later, as Lily scrolled through her phone in private, Anna's words replayed in her head. What mess in Boston? Why had Jason never mentioned it? Why did Emma bring it up now? Emma was patient. She knew that secrets, once unearthed, grew roots of suspicion in the mind. Over the next week, she dropped similar breadcrumbs, some about Jason, others about Lily herself, always small enough never to seem malicious, but weighted with implication. I saw your painting at the art show last month, she told Lily. It reminded me of that time you ran away after the breakup with Tyler. I hope you're not revisiting old regrets. Lily's brow furrowed, the compliment tinged with shadow. How did Emma remember that? And why ask about it now? With Jason, the approach was equally precise. Late one evening, when he returned from work, Emma greeted him with a simple question. Have you talked to Lily recently? She seemed off, like she's hiding something. Jason stiffened, just for a moment, the muscles in his jaw tightening ever so slightly. No, not really, he replied, too quickly. She's probably just stressed about her exhibit. Emma nodded, made no further comment, and retreated to her book, leaving a cloud of unease floating in Jason's wake. When they lay in bed that night, back to back, she heard the faint clicks of his phone, searching for something he dared not speak aloud. Her strategy was never to accuse outright. Instead, she constructed a maze for Jason and Lily, one they entered together, never quite sure which path led back to trust. At a dinner party with friends, Emma made sure to sit Lily on one side of the table and Jason across from her. She steered conversation toward forgiveness and truth, slyly observing as both her sister and boyfriend grew quieter, eyes darting to catch one another's reactions. Emma also weaponized their shared memories, reshaping them into ambiguous hints. She reminisced, in front of both, about a night several months back when Jason disappeared for hours during a rainstorm, leaving his phone behind with a cryptic excuse. "You remember how you both worried about me that night? Strange how time changes what we're afraid of." For the briefest second, Lily and Jason's eyes locked, each wondering what the other had confessed in their private conversations with Emma. But confession was Emma's most powerful tool, and she wielded it as a painter wields a brush, constructing doubt with every whispered detail. She slowly revealed little-known truths to Lily, cloaked in offhanded sincerity. "I always thought you could do better than Jason's crowd," she said gently one evening. "Some of his old friends are a little reckless. Remember that night when things got out of hand at that bar? I never really trusted what Jason told me afterward." Lily swallowed, anxiety prickling beneath her skin. Was Jason hiding more than just this affair? Had he lied to them both? The tactic worked like a charm. Lily's conversations with Jason grew shorter, more abrupt, punctuated by lingering silence and awkward glances. Emma noticed that Lily used to text Jason at all hours. Now, the messages came sporadically, and Lily's laughter faltered when he tried to joke with her. Jason, growing anxious, began to quiz Lily in return, searching for signs that she'd confided something to Emma. Emma intensified her approach by reviving the ghosts of Lily's past indiscretions. She referenced a time Lily cheated on an old college boyfriend, a truth Emma had kept buried for years. Now, in a moment of feigned vulnerability, Emma confessed to Jason how hard it had been to help Lily out of that mess. "Sometimes I wonder if Lily's forgiven herself for everything that's happened." Jason's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. That night, he questioned Lily, his trust in her fracturing under the weight of secrets Emma had only half revealed. Emma's orchestration went beyond sly remarks and recollections. She manufactured opportunities for misunderstanding, showing Jason a vaguely concerning text from Lily that she insisted was about family stuff, or hinting to Lily that Jason had been unusually distant and preoccupied. Even the smallest inconsistencies, a receipt left out, a call mysteriously missed, became loaded with implication. As the weeks rolled on, Jason and Lily's relationship spiraled. Small arguments flared into heated exchanges, both of them too proud to admit they were grappling with the same gnawing fear, that the other was hiding something deeper, something fatal to their fragile trust. Friends who once admired their chemistry now watched uncomfortably as tension simmered in every interaction. Emma maintained her mask, always caring, always attentive, never angry or jealous, only quietly supportive, a friend to both and a confidant to neither. Inside, she cataloged each shift, each emotional fissure, with a scientist's detachment. When Lily began to confide less in her, Emma smiled and offered comfort. When Jason's frustration bubbled to the surface, Emma calmed him with practiced words. No one could accuse her of anything. She was simply being Emma, loving, patient, and ever so slightly enigmatic. One afternoon, as autumn's chill crept into Seattle, Emma watched from her window as Lily sat on the porch, scrolling anxiously through her phone. Jason's car pulled into the driveway, and for a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them was thick with accusation. Every word Emma had planted had blossomed into suspicion. Every memory she had manipulated now returned as a weapon they hurled at one another. It was, Emma realized, as if she'd rewritten the code beneath their connection. they lashed out preemptively, suspecting betrayal before it took root, punishing each other for imagined slights that Emma had only hinted into reality. At night, their furtive texts and whispered calls grew cold, each battle farther from love, closer to the ruins Emma had planned. Yet inside, as she crossed another note off her journal, planted the Boston story, reminded Lily of Tyler, made Jason doubt her texts, Emma felt an unsettling blend of triumph and sadness. The power she wielded tasted both sweet and bitter. She was winning, yes, but the cost was a world colder, emptier than before. But Emma could not stop. Not yet. This was her masterpiece, a quiet, step-by-step undoing. She owed it to herself to see it through. Mutual destruction. As autumn deepened, the air in Emma's once peaceful home grew heavy with tension, thick as storm clouds pressing low on the horizon. Inside, the fabric binding Jason and Lily together had begun to fray beyond repair. Emma's quiet sabotage, her expertly planted doubts, subtle reminders of old wounds, and calculated hints had done its work. Trust between Jason and Lily was withering, their fragile alliance now brittle. Every glance and conversation laced with suspicion and resentment. The end didn't come with a single explosion, but rather as a slow, rolling earthquake. Fault lines growing wider beneath their feet until, all at once, the ground gave way. It started late, one Friday afternoon, when Jason confronted Lily in the driveway. Emma watched from an upstairs window, heart thudding, not with guilt, but with anticipation. Jason's voice carried, sharper than usual, anger barely contained. "Why have you been avoiding my calls?" he demanded, blocking Lily's path toward the front porch. Lily bristled, flipping her keys in her palm, jaw set. "You're the one who's been distant," she shot back. "At least I'm not spending hours texting work friends and then lying about who I'm with." Emma recognized the performance. Each accusation wasn't just about their hidden relationship. It was about betrayal layered on betrayal. Secrets they had kept not only from Emma, but from each other. Now those secrets were coming unbound, raw and messy, with no one left to defend or explain. Inside the house, Emma carefully set her coffee aside, every sense attuned to the storm spiraling outside. She didn't rush to interfere. This wasn't her reckoning. This was theirs. Jason, voice trembling with a cocktail of rage and fear, hissed, "Are you seriously accusing me? All those cryptic messages, the nights you forgot your charger? Don't insult my intelligence, Lily. I know you've been hiding things from me, and from Emma." At the mention of her name, time seemed to slow. Emma felt her pulse at her temples, icy and electric. Lily's eyes blazed, a mix of hurt and defiance. "You want to talk about secrets? What about Boston, Jason? Or should I bring up what you did at the firm? You know, the job you told everyone you left on good terms. Don't make me pull up the emails." Jason's defenses faltered, briefly, giving Emma a flash of satisfaction. He hadn't known Lily kept proof, nor that Emma, weeks earlier, had slyly prompted Lily to keep it, framing it as self-protection. Emma's orchestration was everywhere, and invisible, her presence haunting every word. The argument spilled into the hallway, voices echoing against hardwood floors. "I covered for you!" Lily shouted, desperate now. "When Emma found your receipts, when she asked about your late nights, I lied for you. I lied to my own sister so you could keep playing the good boyfriend. Don't talk to me about loyalty." Jason's face flushed red. "Don't pin this on me. It takes two. If you hadn't needed me to cover for you with Tyler, If Emma knew the truth about who you really are, she'd never have trusted you again. You're just mad I won't keep your secrets anymore. It was a toxic feedback loop, each accusation defeating the next. Their words like daggers thrown without aim. Years' worth of hidden transgressions, small and large, ripped free of the neat wrappings they'd used to hide them. Old relationships, borrowed money, broken confidences. Everything once held between them as co-conspirators was now hurled as ammunition. Neither noticed Emma standing at the top of the stairs. She said nothing, her expression unreadable, just a quiet specter above the chaos. She felt an ache deep in her chest, a sadness for the two people battling below, but she refused to intervene. This was the cost of their choices, a fury that couldn't be contained by reason or old affections. Finally, Lily's voice cracked. I'm done living in your shadow. I'm done being the scapegoat every time something goes wrong in your life. And I'm done being the bad guy in Emma's eyes. You want to confess? Go ahead. Tell her everything. We both deserve to face the consequences. For a moment, the hallway went silent, filled only by the sound of their harsh breathing. The house felt smaller, suffocating. Jason tried again, softly this time. Emma will never forgive us. You know that. His voice held a tremor, a plea, or perhaps a warning. Whatever's left, whatever we had, it's over. If she finds out the whole story, and not just about us. Lily's lips curled in a bitter half-smile. What's left to lose, Jason? Haven't we already shattered everything that mattered? Back in the living room, Emma watched shadows lengthen across the floor, tracing memories she once cherished. Portraits of laughter and kinship, Sunday dinners and whispered secrets, all stained now with the truth laid bare. Downstairs, Jason and Lily's fight dissolved into exhausted tears and slammed doors, voices growing hoarse with confession and blame. There was no longer any hiding. Friends heard, neighbors glimpsed flashes of fights through curtained windows. It didn't take long for rumors to ripple out, first as whispers, then as open gossip at work, among art circles. In every corner of the lives they'd so carefully curated. With the truth unleashed, Jason and Lily each began to unravel in their own way. Jason tried apologizing to Emma, but his words faltered, weighed down by the enormity of his double betrayal. Emma's silence unnerved him more than anger. He realized, perhaps too late, that he'd lost not just her love, but her respect. At work, his performance suffered, colleagues whispering about integrity issues from his past. Relationships he'd banked on, professional and personal alike, grew distant, trust evaporating as Emma's quiet dignity cast his unraveling in sharper contrast. Lily, meanwhile, found herself ostracized by friends who felt deceived or caught in the crossfire. Her art, once vibrant with hope and color, turned dark and chaotic, her hands unable to paint the old joy back into her world. Even those few who sought to comfort her found her prickly and mistrustful. Every kindness met with suspicion. Alone in her apartment, she stared at half-finished canvases, haunted by the realization that, in destroying her bond with her sister, she'd also destroyed the anchor that kept her steady. The last pieces fell apart at a family gathering, when sharp truths were spoken aloud by others. An aunt pulled Emma aside, whispering, "I'm so sorry. Sometimes the people we love disappoint us the most." The words, meant as comfort, echoed through Emma's mind as she watched Lily stand awkwardly beside the dessert table, eyes darting, searching, perhaps, for forgiveness she didn't know how to ask for. Jason and Lily, Once allies in secrecy, now stood as adversaries, bound not by love or even guilt, but by scorn, betrayal, and regret. Their mutual destruction was complete. Reputations lost, friendships strained, relationships poisoned. Only Emma, for all her pain, stood apart, damaged but not ruined, the sole survivor of the storm she had. Unleashed, quietly grappling with whether the hollow victory was enough, or if there was any peace left to be found, Emma faces the past. For days after the collapse, Emma drifted through her life in a muted daze, moving from room to room like a ghost haunting her former happiness. The air in her home hung stagnant, thick with memories, regret, and the aftershocks of betrayal. Her routine persisted. She made coffee each morning, washed the same mugs, watered her plants, and answered emails. But every gesture felt mechanical, as if she were moving through a life that no longer belonged to her. The world outside began to change with the season. The golden leaves of early autumn gave way to brittle November winds, branches stripped bare and shivering under gray Seattle skies. Emma found herself drawn to the front porch, wrapped in a sweater, watching the clouds drift by, sometimes for hours. She let her thoughts circle endlessly. Where did things begin to fall apart? And how had she not seen the signs until it was too late? Alone with her thoughts, Emma's sense of triumph over Jason and Lily's unraveling began to dissolve. At first, she felt justified. Her pain had demanded some form of reckoning. She had orchestrated their downfall with a strategist's precision, watched as they turned on each other, exposing every dark secret and hidden fault line. But as the dust settled, victory became a strange and empty thing, tinged with guilt and exhaustion. The satisfaction of revenge curdled into something sharp and hollow. One particularly sleepless night, Emma wandered into the living room, unsure why she couldn't rest. Driven by impulse, she opened the box tucked beneath her bookshelf, the one filled with old letters, family photos, and mementos from her and Lily's childhood. She sifted through faded Polaroids, Lily laughing in the backyard, Jason and Emma beaming at a college party, the three of them bundled up for a snowy Christmas. Each photograph carried a weight distinct from the pain of the present. Nostalgia cut through her, tinged with a longing for innocence lost. It was there, in the quiet flicker of a table lamp, that Emma let herself remember. Not just the recent betrayals, but all the ways she and Lily had been shaped by their past. The fights as children, when Emma, always protective, would hide Lily's mistakes from their parents. The times Lily rebelled as a teenager, refusing to come home for dinner, running with the wrong crowd, and Emma was the only person who'd go searching for her. She realized their relationship had never been simple. The boundaries between love, loyalty, and resentment were always blurred. As she traced the stories captured in those images, Emma asked herself a question she'd been avoiding. When did she and Lily begin to drift apart? Was it slow, like a tide that goes out too far to notice before it's gone? Or was there a breaking point she'd never identified? A moment, perhaps in young adulthood, when secrets and jealousy began to dig their roots between them? Her thoughts circled one summer in particular, after Lily's first heartbreak. Emma had been working her first demanding job, barely in her 20s, and stretched thin. Lily called her at 3 a.m, sobbing about a boy who'd lied. Emma, exhausted, snapped at her instead of offering comfort. For weeks, they barely spoke. Looking back, Emma wondered if the small wound had never completely healed. Growing quiet, but persistent. A chasm that years of avoidance, little betrayals, and unspoken expectations only widened. Now, years later, with everything laid bare, Emma asked herself what the sum of those wounds meant. How much of what had happened was the result of old scars, left untended and ignored? Had she in some way been revenging not just Jason's and Lily's recent deception, but every disappointment and every moment of feeling unheard or unloved? Guilt pulsed through her. She could not deny that her calculated revenge had changed her, revealed a darkness that frightened as much as it empowered her. Emma's desire for control had made her the puppet master, but in winning, she discovered she could not rewind the devastation. She could still hear Jason's tremulous apology, the thin edge of desperation in Lily's voice trying to explain. Even as she shut them out, a part of Emma mourned what could now never be repaired. Unable to sleep, Emma began journaling again, something she hadn't done since college. She filled pages with questions, half-answers, confessions to herself. Is forgiveness weakness or strength? Am I capable of it? Would it help? Was I always searching for a reason to hurt them back? Or did that darkness only bloom because they broke my trust? Each entry brought clarity, yet also deepened the ache, as Emma confronted not just her pain, but pieces of herself she had long avoided. As November passed, so did Emma's all-consuming anger. She forced herself to walk every morning, despite the drizzle, letting her mind settle into the rhythm of footsteps and breath. On these walks, she thought of the human messiness beneath every betrayal, how trust is fragile, how love changes with time and pressure, and how family wounds shape what we accept or deny about ourselves. One rainy afternoon, Emma found herself standing before the old maple near her childhood home, the one she and Lily used to climb, carving their initials side by side. The tree was older, scarred by seasons, but still standing. She let her hand rest on the bark and wept quietly, not just for what she had lost, but for the beauty of what had once been. That evening, Emma wrote a letter to Lily. She didn't send it, just folded it and placed it in the box with the childhood photographs. It wasn't an apology, nor an accusation, but an honest confession. I miss you, and I miss the way things were before we hurt each other. I wish I could say I forgive you completely, but I'm still learning how. Maybe the best I can offer now is the hope that one day we'll both be less angry, less afraid. For the first time, Emma dreamed not of revenge or sorrow, but of a future where the past stopped holding her so tightly. She realized that healing was not a single event, but an ongoing, sometimes brutal process. The undoing of shame, grief, in the armor of control. By facing her past honestly, Emma began to understand. The only way forward wasn't through punishing others or herself, but through the quiet, patient work of accepting imperfection. That winter, as the days darkened early, and the city's lights flickered cold and bright, she resolved to step into her next chapter, not with vengeance or denial, but with all the broken, beautiful truths she'd finally stopped running from. The consequences of the game. Winter set in with a grayness that seemed to seep into every corner of Emma's world. While the drama that had once electrified the house had subsided, a bruised quiet lingered, thick with the echoes of everything lost. The events of the past months, the betrayals, the reckonings, the collapse, had left scars on all three lives, changing them in ways none of them had ever imagined. For Jason, life after the reckoning was a daily reckoning in itself. The breakup with Emma was not a sudden parting, but a slow, bitter process. At first, he tried to fix things with texts, emails, and calls, but her answers were brief, and her voice on the phone was cold, cautious, unfamiliarly distant. He realized quickly that regret and apology, no matter how sincere, were simply not enough. The trust that had been so painstakingly built over the years couldn't be repaired with words, not after everything he had done. Professionally, the consequences rippled outward. Rumors from his old job in Boston, once just vague whispers, began to follow him more closely as colleagues noticed the shadows under his eyes and the drop in his performance. He made mistakes at work, missing deadlines, forgetting details. His manager's patience, once generous, wore thin. Invitations to lunch were fewer, and conversations in the break room dried up when he walked in. The isolation grew so acute, it was almost physical, a daily punishment for the duplicity he tried and failed to bury. Even old friends stopped inviting him to their gatherings, unsure of what to believe anymore. At night, his apartment, which had once been a sanctuary, felt oppressive and small. He replayed the fights again and again, with Emma, with Lily, and with himself. The comfort of denial was gone, as was the illusion of happy endings. Sometimes he tried to numb himself with television, or drinks, or half-hearted dating apps, but nothing stuck. Loneliness was the sharpest sting, and with every passing day, he understood that some wounds, especially those caused by betrayal, don't heal the way you want them to. They become part of you, a lesson learned too late. Lily, on the other hand, spun out into a different kind of chaos. Her art, once vibrant and full of daring color, turned uncertain and gray. Friends in her circle noticed her withdrawal. She missed shows, skipped brunches, left messages unattended. The story of what happened, how she and Jason had hurt Emma, spread quickly among their mutual acquaintances. Some tried to offer sympathy at first, but as more details came out, sympathy shifted to judgment, or simply faded away. Galleries that once called her regularly now went silent, hesitant to risk their reputation by association. Family gatherings were no easier. Lily's parents, though kind on the surface, radiated disappointment she couldn't ignore. Her mother's hugs felt stiffer, her father's stories shorter, the pregnant pauses between them speaking volumes. At Christmas, Lily hovered near the entryway, unable to approach Emma, who sat quietly at the dining table, the gap between them unbridgeable. For her, the loss was not just of her sister, but of herself, or at least the version she'd been before everything fell apart. She grappled with nightmares, with memories she tried to paint over, but couldn't. Alone in her tiny studio, she began to understand how much of her work had been built on the comfort of Emma's support, the foundation of their shared history. Stripped of that, Lily was adrift. In her darkest moments, Lily considered reaching out. She drafted apology texts, started emails she would never send, even drove by Emma's house late one night before thinking better of it and turning back. The guilt was stubborn and unrelenting. It wouldn't allow her to move on, and it wouldn't let her go back. In her journal, she scribbled page after page. How do you fix the unfixable? And, if my art is my truth, do I even deserve to make it anymore? The silence between her and Emma became its own prison, heavy and constant, molding her days with regret. For Emma, the aftermath was its own labyrinth. She moved through each day with a newfound wariness, no longer trusting herself as easily as before. Even as she healed, the process was never linear. Some days the memories swept over her like a tide, unbidden, sought and raw. On the worst mornings, she woke breathless from dreams, in which she was chasing Lily and Jason down endless hallways. Their backs always turned away from her. Relationships changed in the wake of her ordeal. Friends checked in often at first, hosting her for dinners and inviting her out, but Emma found it difficult to be fully present. She saw couples differently, scrutinized the way people touched and talked, always wondering what lay underneath. Old friends who had once admired her stable life now tiptoed around the subject, unsure if kindness would become pity. She felt both exposed and invisible. At work, Emma poured herself into projects, grateful for the predictability of deadlines and meetings. She won new clients, landed promotions, but even her successes felt strangely muted. There was a melancholy that colored everything. Accomplishment no longer tasted as sweet because she had changed so much to reach it. Her mother, ever supportive but quietly anxious, began to call more often. Sometimes Emma let the calls go to voicemail, needing space to grieve without anyone watching. When she did answer, their conversations felt heavier than before. Less gossip, more philosophy, as if both women knew the world had lost some of its innocence. But as weeks turned to months, Emma experienced small, stubborn moments of relief. She started to appreciate solitude with its own gentle clarity, discovering peace in quiet Sunday mornings, in walks through rain-swept parks, in the rituals of making tea or organizing her bookshelf. She went to therapy, where she learned the difference between forgiving and forgetting, and how to measure her progress not by the absence of pain, but by the return of hope. Still, the most lasting consequence was the lesson she would never have wished for herself. Trust, she realized, did not simply snap and disappear. It frayed, unraveled, and could, eventually, begin to mend, though never in quite the same form. The cost of playing games with others' hearts was not always paid at once, nor only by the guilty. Everyone, in their own way, bore the mark of what had happened. By spring, the world outside had begun to change again. Buds on trees, sunlight warming the chill, a sense of possibility in the air. The wounds remained, but Emma, Jason, and Lily each found themselves searching for something more than punishment or regret. Perhaps all of them hoped, in quiet ways, for a new beginning, even if that beginning would be forever shaped by the consequences of the game they had played. A new beginning. Spring arrived quietly in Seattle. It did not burst in with fanfare, but tiptoed back into Emma's world. Soft rain washing pollen from the streets, tiny buds daring to unfurl on trees battered by a long winter. For Emma, it felt less like a rebirth and more like a gradual waking from a heavy, colorless sleep. She had spent the winter learning to sit with her pain, letting it breathe instead of locking it away. Now, she found herself standing in her yard one morning, barefoot in wet grass, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet and the unfamiliar ache of hope fluttering in her chest. The house was different now. Where once it had held echoes of laughter and betrayal, it had become Emma's sanctuary, a place to rebuild on her own terms. She painted the kitchen a bright, summery yellow with her own hands, spilled paint on her old jeans, and didn't care that the lines near the floor weren't perfect. Each morning, she brewed coffee and sipped it at the window, watching the world outside soften and blur, learning how to measure her days not by what was missing, but what she was choosing to create. Her relationships, too, began to shift. The flood of well-intentioned check-ins had waned. People respected her space now, sensing she needed room to grow into someone new. She reached out when she was ready, texted a close friend, and met for a slow walk. Cold drinks clinking as they sat at an outdoor table and traded small triumphs. These catch-ups were honest, sometimes awkward, tinged with sadness, but also with genuine delight at what was still possible. Emma kept up with therapy, tentatively at first, then making it a regular part of her week. She was surprised at how much she learned about boundaries, about anger, about the freedom that came from saying, "I'm not okay, but that's not the end of the world." One session, she finally allowed herself to talk about Lily, the shared childhood, the losses that didn't begin with Jason, the irrational longing to call her just to ask her opinion about a new book. The therapist listened with no judgment, helped her tease out the tangled roots of hurt and love, and Emma left that day lighter, as if hope had finally been given space to grow. The letters Emma wrote, to herself, to Lily, even one to Jason she would never send, accumulated in a blue ceramic box on her dresser. There was one in particular she read over again, written on a rainy night after she'd dreamed of childhood summers. "Dear Lily, I hope you're finding peace wherever you are. I hope you're painting. I don't know if I'll ever forget or truly forgive, but I am ready to stop carrying this bitterness like a shield. My door is open if you ever want to talk." She hadn't signed it. That felt right. Unfinished, but no longer angry, Emma's career moved forward, slowly but surely. She took on a major project at work, surprising herself with bold ideas and steady leadership. Her boss noticed. Colleagues began to treat her as a quiet anchor, not just the diligent team player she'd always been. With each success, Emma reclaimed a bit more trust in herself. Trust she had thought was lost for good. One Saturday, on a whim, Emma signed up for a pottery class downtown. She was hopelessly awkward at first. Her first bowl collapsed under her palm, her hands clumsy in wet clay. Yet she laughed freely, red-faced but unashamed, and left the studio with flour-dusted jeans and a crooked mug she regarded with great pride. She met other women her age, some of them also weathering heartbreak or life's trickier turns. And friendships began to sprout, tentative but nourishing. As the weeks unfurled toward summer, Emma let herself open to new experiences. She explored parts of the city she hadn't visited in years, losing herself in bookstores and thrift shops, discovering her favorite new cafe tucked behind a row of dogwood trees. She signed up for a local 5K, training at dawn. The city's foggy hush a comfort as she learned to forgive her body for being tired, for aching, for carrying her forward day after day. Emma's relationship with her parents, once strained by silence, softened as well. They never spoke directly of Jason or Lily, but instead reminisced about old vacations, about Emma's childhood dog, about the ways she'd always been stubborn and quick to defend her sister. Over time, Emma stopped hearing reproach in their voices and heard instead only quiet worry and hope, the hope that she might find happiness again, in her own way. There were still pangs of loss, nights when Emma lay awake remembering the life she had imagined with Jason, the endless ways she had tried to be the perfect sister. But the pain changed. It became less of a wound, more like a faded scar, a reminder of how far she had come and the necessity of falling apart to build something truer. One extraordinary evening, in late May, Emma received a letter in unfamiliar handwriting. It was from Lily, postmarked from Portland. The note was brief and raw. "I don't expect forgiveness. I made mistakes that will haunt me always. I'm working on myself. Maybe one day we'll talk again. I hope you're well, Em." There was no return address, but Emma smiled through sudden tears. Not because the past was fixed, but because the future, however uncertain, was open. Emma placed the letter with her collection and went outside to the porch as dusk fell. The scent of jasmine drifted through the air, and the world seemed softer, more forgiving than before. She sat in the quiet, letting the evening gather around her, and understood that this peaceful, solitary moment was her new beginning. There was no dramatic closure, no neat ending, but there was space, forgiveness, and most of all, possibility. The lessons of betrayal, of revenge, sorrow, and letting go would not disappear. But as the city lights flickered on and laughter from a neighbor's porch drifted over, Emma closed her eyes and imagined not what she had lost, but everything that lay ahead. She knew now healing was a journey, not a destination, and the real beginning was simply the promise to keep going, heart open, no matter how terrifying or beautiful each step might be.